It's happened. There's been a second response posted from Ron and Elaine to A Sean and Carter Have a Podcast. It is in the info. If you don't care, then I will deliver this news to you before you click away. Sean and Carter Have a Podcast will be late this week. I forgot to mention it on last week's episode. Because of the holiday and the retail life, I can't record Friday or Saturday. So it will be recorded and posted on Sunday, which is Easter, because I will. My plans for that day consist of, sleeping. So anyway, Elaine and Ron, let's do it. I would like to acknowledge your response to my response to your response to my podcast. Whoa. So you can thank me for that later and acknowledge my response. What am I talking about? You immediately said, all of a sudden you were like, I have to apologize for how wrong I am about so many things. Carter and I are often wrong or mistaken. I mean, I make a much more deliberate attempt to be vague or offer disclaimers in areas where I know that I'm probably talking out of my butt. When I do that, I'm like, I'm not sure if this, and I try and back out of it. But a little bit later, rugby? What? Horses? Okay. So, your recording quality, and you mentioned this, sounded really bad. I wanted to let you know, one of the reasons that it was probably bad is because it wasn't posted in HD. You posted it in 240p. I don't know why it's so tiny, but the smaller the video gets on YouTube, the worse that the audio compression gets. So even if it sounded a little bit better on your end, it's going to sound worse on our end because of YouTube. Just wanted to let you know. Friends. Carter and I love Friends. We've talked about it before. Friends is one of my favorite sitcoms ever. And I've mentioned that I have problems with sitcoms with laugh tracks. Friends is one of the few shows that the laugh track is just part of the show to me. I don't even think about it. I usually mention Friends, Home Improvement, and third show. There was a third show that I always threw in there with the laugh track that didn't bother me. I'm losing it now. Okay, well, it wasn't Seinfeld, so don't suggest Seinfeld because I've never watched Seinfeld. But we love Friends, and I've talked about it a couple times with Carter, but not publicly because I just haven't gotten around to it. There is a new show on ABC that just wrapped up its second season last night called Happy Endings that, for all intents and purposes, is the new Friends. It's got every element to Friends that I liked so much, but it is a more modern feeling sitcom. It's not documentary style, so it's not Modern Family. It's not sitcom, like 3-camera sitcom. It is a single camera sitcom. Very quick dialogue, very snappy, witty dialogue back and forth. And the 6 leads, because it is like Friends, 3 guys, 3 girls, are all really great, including Alicia Cuthbert, who played Jack Bauer's daughter, Kim, on 24. She is the best ditz I've seen in 10 years on TV. She's like, if you ever watch Red vs. Blue, she is the caboose of every situation. She says the weirdest non sequitur stuff that is just absolutely hysterical. Anyway, I could go on about that for a while. Jennifer Aniston is gorgeous, and she will always be gorgeous. Now we've gotten to the point with the rugby. Seriously? Rugby? Horses? The rest of the world would be so mad at you, you ignorant American. Also, as far as rugby tosses, I don't know if you ever figured out, Ron, what exactly the record was about rugby tosses. I know that when you throw a ball in rugby, just like when you throw a ball in football, which you can but no one ever does, you can throw a ball laterally or behind you. And in rugby, they do that all the time. It's much more common to pass the ball in rugby than it is in American football. So maybe that record that you were looking at was the number of rugby passes, like shuttles laterally or behind, as a team went up a field. I don't know. That was what came to mind when you were talking about it. Thank you so much for talking about Not Another Minecraft series. Like Elaine pointed out at the beginning, I'm not talking about it, which means I'm not really going to talk about it now. I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for talking about it. I will point other people to your discussion, especially if you continue to have it. I don't know when the 6th episode will be posted. I don't have any... I'm too busy. I don't have plans to make it. You probably won't see it before next weekend. And see, now that I'm saying that, I feel anxious and worried that I'm not going to make it by then, but that's just the way it works. Also, you will not, I promise right now, you will not see the operator in this. There will be no Slender Man. If there is an Enderman in the video, that is just a coincidence, and the fact that Endermen are in Minecraft is kind of unavoidable. I'm not ever going to bring the Slender Man or Marble Hornets directly into this. It's just an influence, that's all. So don't worry about that. There was one more. I'm getting lost. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to edit because I can't remember everything at once, and I had a bunch of false starts. It's awful. I thought I could do this. Elaine, you mentioned that you hadn't yet watched The Arrival. I would advise, if you want a complete understanding of NAMS, and you do, don't you, watch it. First of all, it's only 15 minutes long. If that. Second, it is listed on my main page, Sean V. Martin. It is on the right side under featured playlists, so you can just click it right there. It is also tagged as NAMS #1 as a response to The Arrival Part 4, which is the last one. So anyway, check that out. That is the last thing I'm going to say about NAMS and Minecraft. Ron said that Carter had to take down all of his vlogs, and then he got into this whole conversation about showing your face. I think I watch so many people who don't show their faces. Elaine has been one of them. Supremo Pete, I've never seen his face. I don't know. It's like there are certain people who I don't see their faces, and it registers with me that I haven't seen what this person looks like. But I also don't really care. There are lots of people who are like, show us what you look like on your channel. We want to know. And I'm just like, if they want to show it, they want to show it. If they don't want to, I mean, this is my approach to everything. Like, people do what they want to do, and I'm fine with it. If you don't want to show your face, don't show your face. The only thing that happens to me when I see someone's face, I understand Prof. Snape saying that people want to see a real person. And I would say that depends on your style of commentary. If you're commentating the game and all you ever talk about is the game, and you talk about games, and you talk about the game industry, and you just talk about games, then if you never show your face, I'm never going to think it's weird that I don't really think of you beyond a person who commentates. If you commentate and talk about your real life, and talk about your parents, or your girlfriend, or your kids, or whatever, and you never show your face, then I feel like that's a little weird. Like, this is a real person talking about their real life, talking about their daily activities. Why don't they show us what those are? That's when I think it's... And so, Elaine, every so often you mention that you have a job, and you mention, like, I work in an office. But other than that... Oh, and you mentioned the Duke. You mentioned your boyfriend. Fiancé, sorry. But you don't go a whole lot into your personal life. I tend to talk about my personal life almost every time I turn on the news channel and talk to the camera, like I am right now. So anyway, faces, my personal reaction, my friend the Epic Gamer guy, I had an image of what I thought he looked like in my head. Also, I kept forgetting for the longest time that he was 14. Like, I was thinking for some reason he was like 17 or 18. He's 14. I had an image of what I thought he might look like, and I finally saw him last week, and I was like, huh. Like, not at all what I expected, and I would imagine that's been pretty much the case with just about anyone who I've eventually seen. Unknown Demon was another one that I was like, oh, that's what he looks like. Like, it wasn't a big deal. It didn't change anything, but I was like, surprised. Ron, I don't think I was that surprised when I saw you. I don't know. Did you already have your skin when you appeared on video? Because maybe that like informed the way I was picturing you in my head. I don't remember how that worked. Okay, so moving on. Carter face. Oh, I wanted to mention also, because you talked about Carter taking down his videos. I think that you were correct that it was a moment in time, that was part of it. But I think the other thing was that if you Google him, you will find out what his job is, and I think there's a reason that he didn't want to have that stuff online while he was doing the job that he's doing. Oh boy, so many edits, but I had to go get this. So Total Recall. Total Recall is based on a Philip K. Dick story, much like Minority Report and Blade Runner and Paycheck. Yes, even Paycheck. The problem with most Philip K. Dick adaptations is that Hollywood destroys the core of the story. Minority Report is an exception. Minority Report was a short story. The movie basically expanded a lot, but they didn't change really anything about the idea. Blade Runner, which was originally a book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, they gutted. There is very little in the movie that is... The theme of this book is entirely different from what the movie is. For that reason, I don't particularly enjoy the movie. It's basically a separate experience for me. I'm glad that they changed the title because at least that makes it different. Total Recall is much the same way. The Arnold Schwarzenegger version is essentially not the story that Philip K. Dick wrote. I kind of wish that it were a different movie or it were a different title so that now when they're making Total Recall, people are like, oh, now they're finally adapting that story the correct way. Instead of like, I can't believe they're remaking a classic movie. Because yes, the movie is classic and great and like a perfect example of that kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger sci-fi. Like that is a perfect example of that, but it's not Total Recall. It's something else entirely. And then you talked about changing the end of Star Wars. You misinterpreted what we were talking about. We weren't saying that George Lucas changed the end of Star Wars. We're saying that now that BioShock has said we'll change the end, that everyone's like biggest complaint about any sci-fi anything in history is the Ewoks. And we're afraid at this point now that George Lucas is going to be like, I can fix the ending of Return of the Jedi, and he's going to go in there and change the way it ends. That would be... So we're afraid that the fans, like the YouTubers, will be like, here's the problem. George Lucas, 30 years ago, killed my favorite trilogy by ending it with a bunch of cuddly teddy bears. And we're suing him for not fulfilling on his promises to deliver an epic conclusion to a sci-fi trilogy that I found fulfilling and satisfying. Change the ending, George Lucas. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about him adding Hayden Christensen, as silly as that is. Ron's reasoning being that maybe it was a ghost that reflected him as a good person. Fine. George Lucas knew how much the fans hated Hayden Christensen as Anakin, and he still put him in there. Didn't change anything else. Didn't change Obi-Wan to Ewan McGregor for any reason. He just changed Anakin. He knew what the reaction was going to be. I have no further opinion on it. Childhood author. I'll save mine for a second. I've read all of Chronicles of Narnia. That's why every so often you hear me say further up and further in. I have also wanted, but have not been able to read, C.S. Lewis's science fiction. You didn't mention this. He wrote a science fiction trilogy called Space. It includes, the first book is Out of the Silent Planet, and the second book is Paralandra, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and this is the third book, That Hideous Strength. And someone I think my parents bought this for me a couple years ago. Well, Mom and Dad, it's hard to read the third book of a trilogy without reading the first two. I'm just going to point that out. I still don't have the first two. I guess I should buy them on my book reading device. But C.S. Lewis is a phenomenal author, and I would say as far as his theology goes, most people seem to think that Lewis approached theology that one would approach philosophy, and therefore, I mean, I have Mere Christianity around here somewhere, probably over on that bookshelf as well, but I didn't grab it. He's a philosopher, and he's an idea maker, and he's very creative, and he was a phenomenal writer when he was alive. Elaine's favorite was Frank Baum and Wizard of Oz, which I mentioned in my rebuttal, my response. which I thought was interesting because, hold on, let me actually Google the thing that I'm trying to Google. Gregory, there we go. I have not read any of the original Wizard of Oz books ever. I understand how different they are from the movie and everything that pop culture seems to know. I mean, even things like Ruby Red Slippers. That was an invention of Hollywood. That was not in the books. I am pretty familiar with Wicked, and I've read the book. I've seen the show. I've read the sequel, which is Son of a Witch, and here's what I was looking for. There are two more? I haven't read, oh man, I gotta read these. He's written 4 Wicked books. Wicked, Son of a Witch, A Lion Among Men, and Out of Oz, which came out last November. So I'm only halfway through that series. I would love to read the other 2 books because they were phenomenal. Anyway, my favorite, and I'm going to throw it out there right now, we can talk about this on the podcast, is Louis Sachar. Louis Sachar wrote Sideways Stories from Wayside School, which was the way I discovered him, but he also wrote a bunch of other books. I have a list. He, of course, wrote Holes. That's probably his most well-known success because it went on to be made into a movie starring Shia LaBeouf. And he also wrote Dogs Don't Tell Jokes, which I have in a box in my closet. There's A Boy in the Girl's Bathroom, which I also have in a box in my closet. And it looks like not a whole lot else. Mostly Sideways Stories. He wrote 5 Sideways Stories books. The reason that also he looks a surprising amount like Larry David, which is weird, and the coincidence. The thing that I most liked about Louis Sachar, and a thing that speaks to my sense of humor for my entire life, is he's absurd. He writes absurd humor that does not make any real sense. It's just absurd. It would not happen. It could not happen that way. It is so silly and abstract. And the Sideways Stories from Wayside School is a perfect example. In one of the books, they mention that the workers, I mean, the weirdest thing about this school is that, if you've never read these books, it's supposed to be 30 classrooms, single row, one big long row. Well, the contractor mixed it up and accidentally built one classroom 30 stories high. So there's just 30 stories of classrooms. And there is a common building thing that they do not label the 13th floor in tall buildings. They go from 12 to 14. It's just like a superstitious thing. If you're in an elevator, you'll see 12 and then 14. And the 14th floor is the 13th floor, but it's actually not, because usually the lobby is 2 floors, which actually means that the 12th floor is the 13th floor. But anyway, in their story, there is a 13th floor, but there's no 19th floor. And the only reason is that they forgot to label it. But later you find out that there actually is a 19th floor, and everyone who's there, when they leave, they can't get back. And the people who aren't there can't get there, except for one person who ends up there by mistake. And there's even something like one time they kick a ball up the side of the building, and it hits the 19th floor window and never comes back. It's phenomenal, and it, like I said, completely absurd, just bullcrap. Like, it was the silliest stuff, and I loved reading it. I want to mention that we still don't know what the middle of a colored pencil is because we didn't bother to look it up, and also that you don't know what you're talking about, and you're wrong. Done!